Hi, this is Lady Lex UK and this is a Dreams gadget tutorial. Today we are looking at the impact sensor. You can find that in sensors and input, and there it is there, the impact sensor. It's a bouncing ball. Right, now this impact sensor, like the other sensors, this doesn't actually make things impact. This is just a monitoring device. It gives you a load of numbers and pulses and signals. So let's have a look at its tweak menu. And like all the sensors, the top one here, regardless of what this symbol is, they're all the same. This is your wire. This is what you use to wire to the object that you want to detect. And like the others, you can wire it directly with this wire, or you can surface snap the gadget to the object directly, or put this object inside a microchip and surface snap the microchip to your object. So there's the three ways that you can decide which object you're going to monitor. Now, this is sensitivity, so how the sensitivity of the sensor to impacts. So you could have it very sensitive, so any slight touch and it will set it off, or you could have it so you have to have quite a severe impact. Leaving it at 1 is probably most likely what you're going to do. So I wouldn't play about with this unless you're finding there is a specific need to move it about because you need it a little bit more sensitive or a little bit less sensitive. But I would stick with 1 to start with and until you get a problem, and then you can start fiddling about with it. Here we have our sensors. It's going to sense touching, bumps, rolls and scrapes. So that is basically it, and on our second page we've got the various labels, so we can pick and choose whether it's going to detect things with all of the labels, some of the labels, none of the labels, etc. But, and here is a big but, the impact sensor does not detect every object. It has very specific criteria as to what objects it will detect. Here is a cube. This cube, if you notice, I've got my sensors all wired up to some number displayers, and as I drop my block, if it lands on the floor, it's showing some numbers. Don't worry about what these numbers are at the moment. I'll explain that in a minute. There we go. That is a block, and as soon as it hits the floor, it goes from 000 to some numbers. Like so. Right. If we look at the properties of this object, this is the physical properties of my block, we will notice that it is movable, visible and collidable. The impact sensor will only detect a movable object. So if I make this non-movable, so if I get this so that this is a fixed position object, even though it's touching the floor, in fact it's inside the floor, it is not registering with the impact sensor at all because it's not a movable object. So only movable objects can be detected by the impact sensor. Now that can cause you some problems. I would prefer it if this impact sensor was changed so that you had various different options with it. But the moment as it stands, it will only detect movable objects. And to make matters worse, if the object is not collidable, let's grab it. If it's not collidable, it will also not register. It needs to be a movable and collidable object. So if you had something such as a bullet, which is non-collidable because you're firing out of a gun and it makes it problematic to have it collidable, and you want it to pass through your player, it's an impact sensor is not going to work to detect whether or not you have fired and hit your player because it needs to be movable and collidable. If you make a bullet movable and collidable, it will push away your player and bounce off him, which probably isn't what you want in your game. So you cannot use impact sensors for things like bullets. It is a shame that we don't have settings so that we can select collidable and non-collidable like we can for like the laser scope. But at the moment, the impact sensor movable and collidable only. Now it's doing a weird thing now because there we go. Right, it bounced like crazy. Right. Visibility, however, makes absolutely no difference. So it will detect visible and non-visible items. Again, this could be an issue. It might be nice to have the option for it to detect visible or non-visible or both, like the other sensors, but it doesn't. So it's going to detect visible and non-visible objects, which, like I say, might cause you some problems if you've got some invisible barriers and things like that that you don't want it to detect. But there's nothing we can do. The impact sensor is what it is. That is what it does right now. But okay, limitations aside, what does it do? Okay, so here's our block, and as you can see, I've wired it to this impact sensor, or I've wired the impact sensor to it, and at the moment it is touching that floor, and this is lit up. If I was to lift it up and drop it, have a look at the bump, which is the second one down. It's pretty quick because it's instantaneous, but you see it's flashing. As it hits the floor, it's registering a pulse to say I've bumped. So the touching is a much longer thing, and the bump like so. Now if I was to pick up my cube and drag it along the floor, it's moving and touching, and this is indicated as a scrape. So that is at the bottom. So moving and touching is a scrape, and that's on the bottom. Because this is a straight-sided object, it doesn't roll very well. So let's get this to roll. There we go. That's rolling. There we go. Rolling. So that's rolling on the surface, and that's recording that. And as soon as it stops moving, there we go. The light goes out. So that's a roll. So you've got scrapes, rolls, bumps, and touches, and that's the different types of impact that it will register. Now, what information does it provide? Okay, so each of these, I've put a splitter on so you can see the information it provides. Impact. This is a signal to say I'm hitting something, I'm touching something, I'm rolling something, whatever. This one is surface type. So let me just hover over that. So this will carries a value for the audio surface type. So if we go into this here now, go to the last one, audio surface type. There we go. This one is the default. Then you've got metal, stone, wood, dirt, gravel, grass, and liquid. So this is going to provide us with a number. So let's link that up to a number displayer. Actually, bump's not the good one. Let's link it to this one up here. Right, so we're going to put a number in. Number displayer, and we'll display that down here. Right. So we know that there we go. As I change the sculpture type, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 0. So this is telling you which surface type. So if you want to know if he's in water, then you could, if he's touching something that's 7, then you know he's standing in water, and then you could do something special with him. Different animation for water, different animation for when he's walking on grass, different animation for when he's walking on stone. You could do all sorts of things with this. So he's detecting whether he's touching the audio surface type, and you could have different animations for each of those if you wanted, and that's how you would do it. Okay, and then this last one is position. Let me just delete that. I've all got that wired up. That's a fat wire from there, because you need an X, Y, and Z positioning, and that's these, and that's what these are. So this is the position. Let me just shut that off. This is the position of our block, which I'm no longer connected to. Let me just wire it back up. There we go. There's a block. There we go. So you can see the numbers. Now, what do these numbers represent, and what are they? So if we put the floor in, right, you can see here is the center of our floor. If I pop my block, just hover over the top, I'll try and get it in the center. It's a little bit difficult to do. There we go. Well, that's close. Okay, so that's mostly 0, 0, 0, 0. And if I move it over here onto this line, that's basically 2, 4, 6. That'll be 8. You can see what I'm doing here. So each of these squares are 2 across, 2 by 2, 2. Minus 2. So you can see they're 2 by 2, these squares. So it might help you if you are trying to position things. That is the floor grid that can help you. So 0, 0, 0, 0. That if I had that perfectly centered, then that would just be 0, 0, 0 all the way down. And that's the position of my block. And as it's registering its position as it's touching, that gives you the position of where an object has fallen. So that might be very useful for you. But it won't detect, like I say, it won't detect it if this is a non-movable, non-collidable object. So it's not as useful as it could be. Right then, so that's the 3 options, and that's what it does. Impact, surface type, and position. So what can we do with it? Well, every time this thing bumps, we could put a bit of sound effects in, couldn't we? So let's try that. So sound mode, sound effects. There we go. Huge glass. Let's shatter. Let's put that on our block. Okay, so as soon as that bumps, we're going to turn the power on. Let's get close to it so we can hear it. There we go. So every time it hits the floor now, it's going to... And interestingly enough, it's louder the higher I drop it. There we go. So there is a way that you could use the impact sensor to put some audio in. So when it hits, it's going to make that lovely noise. There you go. So it's a simple sensor. Again, detect labels. Let's label up our floor, shall we? Let's stick a label on our floor. Let's make it scenery. And now let's unlink scenery. So now it's not going to detect scenery. Now what happens when I try and... now you see, because he's landed on scenery, it's not making that noise. Let's put in a block. Let's put put in a nice big block. Okay, pop that down. Okay, now let's drop it. So make a noise if it's dropping on that, but it doesn't make a noise if I drop it on that. And before, when we're saying surface type, so let's put a sound effect in for the surface type. So we'll put sets and right. We want impacts, collisions, vehicles, combat, dramatic effects, sound response, machines, gaming. No, I don't want any of these. I want water. Maybe there is a water one. Hard, debris, medium, soft. There we go, that'll do. Little splash. Right, so we'll put little splash on there. Okay. Let's change. We are going to detect scenery. We're going to change our sculpture sound to. I think that was 7. 7. So we're going to stick a calculator in. So we want bump. So if bump equals 7, okay, we want to link to that splash. Have I not got? There we go. Right, now that should work. Haven't tried this before, so this will be interesting. Okay, so if I drop it on there, you get glass, and if I drop it on here, I got glass and right. So okay, so we need to put in. So it'll only play one or the other. So we could put a selector in, but I'm not. Let's not do that. Let's and right. Okay. So if it is not that. Wire out. So if we're bump and not that, then we're going to turn on that. Let's see, does that work? Whoops. Okay, drop it on. Glass. Drop it on. Water. There we go. Glass and water. There we go. So it's very good, the impact sensor. It has lots of features in there that you might not know that it did, and hope it's been useful for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in your dreams.